Yeah, it's a good question. Sort of huge opportunity which has opened up in front of us in all areas of endeavour, and that includes local government as a leader of a political group. I'm also involved in, I've been involved in the health service quite substantially, and I'm working at the moment on some clinical decision support software as well. So this whole area of digitisation offers all sorts of new opportunities, but it's rarely, in my experience, the technology itself which causes a block. Nor, to be honest, is it those traditional things like business processes or even strategy. People know how to do those. People get MBAs in doing that kind of stuff. What they don't really get trained to do properly is to think about how the culture of their organisation and the behaviours within it have to change in order to enable transformation. And actually, digital transformation is what we're talking about here, but any kind of major change requires leaders who can think very clearly about how they're behaving, the climate they're creating within an organisation, how the climate influences the culture, and how people behave towards each other. So in Leadershape, where I'm a director, we're a leadership development organisation, and we pick up that piece in particular because it's very underdeveloped. How do leaders behave? How do leaders create a vision and sustain a climate in their organisation which allows innovation, digital transformation, other major change to happen while remaining focused on their core purpose and while also being very true to their own values. So we believe in this thing called transpersonal organisation, which is about taking IQ, intelligence, of course. Most of our leaders have pretty bright people. You don't get to be a leader usually without having to go through some sort of basic filtering for being smart enough to do it. But you also have to have emotional intelligence. That means understanding your own feelings, very importantly, being able to understand the feelings of others, also how to manage other people's emotions, and how as well to manage your own. So that emotional intelligence is very important. We also tack on to that what some people call spiritual intelligence, but really it's talking about what drives you, what your inner drivers are, aligning your own values with those of the organisation in which you work, and that's very important too. And if you can combine all of these, you can think beyond the ego, beyond your own self, even beyond your own immediate organisation or team, to think about all stakeholders, and that makes a big difference as to how effective you can be in creating the right climate for digital transformation. And I'd like to talk about the sort of potential benefits for healthcare, actually. I think that's probably one of the most useful things to do. And it would seem at the moment that most people are trying to sell convenience from the point of view of the citizen or the patient or the person using healthcare. And that is a really important one. But actually the potential is to change something which is mass-produced, the kind of Henry Ford approach to healthcare, in which a service or a system is set out to provide a series of interventions through your life when you hit periods of ill health, to instead looking at very much more of a patient-centred or person-centred approach to healthcare, in which your own knowledge about your own health is enriched, that clinicians and others in the healthcare system have a really good picture of your overall health, and can give you prompts and ideas and guidance in how to manage your health well, and during periods of ill health can give you extremely appropriate treatment which matches again your own lifestyle, your own personal attributes. So one example, of course, which is in the news quite a bit at the moment, is that you can have personalised medicine which matches your genome. It can make a match to your own physiological makeup in a way that was never possible previously. And so, for example, this is being used at the moment to reduce the side effects of things like chemotherapy. But in future, things like immunotherapy will also provide some new treatment mechanisms, which again are very much tailored to the individual and can help in curing or at least managing long-term conditions. And we may, in fact, in our lifetime, begin to see things like cancer as a long-term condition, more akin to high blood pressure than a kind of, well, I guess a generation ago it would have been seen as a death sentence. So there are great possibilities, but there are also great possibilities about the way that healthcare is organised. So the leaders within the National Health Service in the UK are under extreme pressure to manage the performance of their organisations, and it's done in a very sort of old style way, I have to say. It's all about activity measures. And in the future, I think it will be possible to manage an organisation looking at outcomes far more, looking at the population health of the people that you're looking after, and begin to sort of really target resources where you know that they're going to be most effective in keeping people healthy. And that's a very different approach, but that will only happen if the leaders have vision, if they understand that their core purpose is to keep people well, not to treat people well when they're poorly. It also means that they need to reach out across their whole organisation, and that new skill sets are brought to bear on national health, which would include the National Health Service is already a major consumer of extremely advanced technology, but it also still uses a really load of old stuff. So the story goes that they're still the largest purchases of fax machines and dictation machines as well. So there's a long way to go for some parts of the health service. But we can see great examples here in Britain, and there are examples elsewhere in the world as well, about healthcare, how healthcare can change utterly. It can become much more about an individual life, well lived, in good health, with the support of a truly digitally transformed National Health Service. Oh, that's hard, isn't it? Maybe it's something like we've seen major digital disruption have an impact on the outcomes of elections and referendums recently across the world. And I guess it's possibly just getting an understanding of how some of these new digitally driven methods of communication work. But actually that is half right. I think the biggest disruption is the expectations it builds up in consumers of local government services. It means that the people I represent here in Witney and West Oxfordshire are using digital technology in all sorts of areas of their lives very well at the moment. And they have a high expectation that local government will be able to respond to that as well, and will be able to offer convenient and actually quite transformative or innovative services, new services, by using digital technology. And it's not yet the case. There are small changes. You can pay your parking fines online now, but that's not terribly helpful. And it's not transformative in the sense that it's still a transaction, which is a very traditional one. It's not a new service. In fact, it's a sort of digital technology often seems to be used to catch more people doing traffic bad things and then put them into government coffers, put money into government coffers in a more efficient way. And that's not terribly transformative. It's certainly not getting to the guts of what digital transformation can offer. But I do think those expectations, the fact that more and more citizens have expectations, I think, of government and particularly local government, which they're currently not seeing met. The opportunity, though, is to transform not just the way that local government does business. I mean, memos are out and emails are in, but it's still those, and so there are some efficiencies you can drive through better communication through digital technology. But it's also about rethinking the role of local government, I think. So there's a possibility for local government to reimagine itself, again going back to core purpose, as the champion of collective and cooperative enterprise within their community. So it's an enabling organisation, not just a delivery organisation, so that a council can be seen as a place where people can come in order to put together their own efforts to support their community, rather than just a place to lobby for somebody else to do something for them. It would be terrific to think that in 10 years' time, West Oxfordshire District Council, where I am a councillor, will be the convening place, will be an enabler for communities to self-organise, to organise their own services, as well as still delivering services. I mean, there's no question that that will go away. It won't. People need bins collecting. People need social care. These things will continue. But there may be all sorts of innovative new services, either provided directly by the council, but more likely, I think, the council will be acting as the convener, bringing people together and using its relationships in other authorities, perhaps the health service, police, could be other councils as well. In my area, we have town and parish councils, district and county councils. We've also got national government and international networks, using all of those relationships and their convening power to allow citizens to organise their own new services and to give them a sense of liberation. Also to make the services that we provide not necessarily so one size fits all, but also to personalise them in the same way as we were talking about health service being personalised. I think you can offer personalised services in local government. So you might be able to start, for example, having transport schemes which recognise an individual's transport needs rather than just congestion charges for everybody, or bus passes for certain people, or parking fines for particular behaviours. You can begin to be much more creative, I think, in the kind of offer that you can give to people, and the council could respond to individual transport needs in a different way. We may no longer own cars in a fairly short time, particularly with climate change, I think, affecting the way that cars are produced and used. Instead, we may have a council brokered car leasing scheme where the council again uses its convening power, its strength, to be able to offer personalised transport solutions to families and individuals. It's about gaining that better understanding, I think, of how the population that they serve, the kind of services that they need. So if you can use those new technologies to gather more information with permission, but gather more information, you can do a great deal more, I think, to respond to individual need as opposed to having a one-size-fits-all set of services. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, we do suffer with things like fly tipping, but also we have an overarching issue of sustainability in the longer term as well. So waste reduction, reuse, recycling, all of those issues are incredibly important. And we don't yet have a way easily of influencing the waste producers, if you like, as much as we might. And in helping a pretty willing citizenship, actually, most people are very keen to reduce waste, that they are household waste or other kinds of forms of waste. We don't have a really good way of informing them or helping them to change their buying behaviour or lifestyle in order to enable that reduction and recycling to happen more effectively, reuse, reduction, recycling. But with gathering better information about the kind of waste we're collecting, we can target both the people who are producing that waste. We can work with those producers to reduce the amount that they do. We can also work with the citizens, the people we represent, to help them as well understand the challenge. And we could easily be into a virtuous circle of reduction in waste, and in particular things like unrecyclable waste, flyaway plastics and the like, very quickly if we have good information on which to base the decisions we make, and can turn that as well into a more personalised service. Over the next 10 years, or certainly 25, let's say, we need to be using digital technology to personalise services, first of all. To respond to the digital savvy citizens who want to interact conveniently and in a way which suits them. Third, we need to make sure that we maintain our focus on those who don't wish to interact in that way, and so that our services get better and better in terms of face-to-face interactions, and that we don't lose sight of that as a really important part of what we do. And actually local government sometimes at its best compared to some of the national government services in that face-to-face interaction. We run people services for people. That's what local government does. And we need to keep that focus, as well as responding to the digital savvy. The other thing that we need to use digital transformation to do is to change our role in society from being just a service provider, So local government as service provider must continue and must get better, and digital transformation can help with that. But it can also allow us to become much more of a champion for community aspirations, for people wanting to do things in the community. We can become a real powerful and potent partner for the third sector, for example, in delivering services. We can also give individuals a far more power over their own lives and ability to work closely with their neighbours to influence their lives. And we can address some of the massive challenges out there. Number one has to be climate change, I think. We know we've only got a short window before we are into irreversible climate change, which will have all sorts of terrible effects. And in our area, one of the worst is flooding. But we also have other challenges as well. One of them, I would say, is inequality. So we know that inequality is driving all sorts of rifts in society, and it's creating poverty and poverty of aspiration and real anguish and suffering in all of our towns and villages and cities. It's not something that's particularly there is no part of our country or of the world, I would argue, which wouldn't benefit from reducing inequality. And if we have better information, and if the role of the council changes so that we become the champion for our communities and our citizens, then we can begin to address some of the evils caused by inequality and start closing the gap so that we have a much more equal society. That means equal in terms of access to resources and services, family and household incomes, access to housing, but also access to power, so that people are able to have power and control over their own lives. So I think digital transformation has great potential, just allowing government to with permission, know more about the area where they serve, and to provide a different service, this champion of the people.